out, and then Mr. Mullins, I'll just send it to you. Well, actually, I'll send you the link through YouTube once we get it all together. But so we are recording. I just like to let people know that. And again, thank you to President Young and then to Mrs. Flowers for this opportunity. We're kind of in a virtual space. Normally when I do an etiquette workshop, we're kind of at like the convention center or someplace where we actually have food and things like that. And so we are definitely going to cover some etiquette information, but we're also going to cover some leadership information. I think that they kind of align together. And last time when we did this back in May, we kind of got to see how everything aligned. So before we start, I want to go ahead and launch this poll. So this is kind of like some interaction that we're going to do. And so go ahead and take some time. This is our opening icebreaker to answer these questions. So the first question is, I consider myself a leader. And, you know, either you consider yourself a leader, yes or no, or not sure. The second question is, college is in my future. So go ahead and put an answer to that, respond to that. The third one is blank, I'm a first generation college student. And the Department of Ed requires or says that a first generation college student is someone who has parents that have not earned a bachelor's degree. Okay, so that's the third one. The fourth one is blank, a symbol. A blank is a symbol, logo, name, word, and or sentence that companies use to distinguish their product from others. And then the last question is, blank is the customary code of polite behavior in society or among members of a particular profession or group. And so we got 16 people on. I guess there's about maybe 6 debutantes or something. So I'll give a couple more minutes to just get some responses back, and then we'll kind of move on from there. Kind of get our minds up and running. 10:15. I promise you guys we're not going to be here all day. So give me a few moments. All right, so let's go ahead and end the poll. About 7 people's responses. All right, so we're going to end that. We won't share results.
Mr. Williams, were you expecting us to input answers too? Or those?
Oh, no, that's fine. No, it's cool.
I mean, they were taking on the screen, so I didn't know. I just.
Oh, no, that's fine. No.
But while we're waiting, I do have a question, if I can ask you, and it's just something I've always wanted to know myself. And you were very clear with your explanation of first generation college student. Mm-hmm. If your parent does not have a BA, has not acquired at least a BA degree. Right. I've always kind of wondered where that factors in, maybe to or does it factor into the generations before that parent? If maybe the parent didn't, but then the grandparent, the great grandparent, the great great. So, just is that a crazy question, or does it have any bearing on?
I've actually never been asked that question, but I think so basically for us to qualify somebody as a first generation student, we have to base it off of whoever's claiming that student. Okay. So my answer would probably be that even if the great grandfather may have had a college degree, but the current parents don't, then they could still technically qualify as first generation. That could be completely wrong, but that's kind of where I'm thinking they would go with that.
Well, it makes sense, and especially in circumstances where that really has a bearing on what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me.
And I always normally like to start with that, just because, and we'll kind of talk about that in this presentation. But just because somebody is a first generation college student, it's actually, should be worn with like a badge of honor. And I think that sometimes people look at it as something
Yeah.
that's a hindrance, but it's actually something because a first generation college student now has the ability to change the dynamic for their family moving forward. And so when we work with those students every day through our Educational Opportunity Center, there's other TRIO programs. It's just so powerful and encouraging to see them, as they kind of move forward.
Okay, thank you
So,
for that. And I'm not going to interrupt you anymore. And I get exactly what you're saying. And I remember from your presentation another time that that's exactly where
What you
you
say?
go.
It's cold out
Yeah.
here.
yeah.
Okay.
Let me go to the store. I had to get my nails done around. Got to say.
Okay, I think I muted Miss Brown. All right, so let me apologize for my dog in case he starts barking. He seems to be pretty good right now. I have a 18-pound dog that should be 16 pounds. He's already eaten for the morning and whatever, but it seems like whenever I get on Zoom calls, that's when he needs to start playing and profusely barking. So if you hear somebody growling in the background or running around, it's not me, it's him. So anyway, today I kind of want to talk about determined to win. And in order for us to be determined to win, I got about 4 different points that I really kind of want us to cover. And we'll kind of dig in deep. When you're determined to win, roadblocks, obstacles, a lot of things are going to get in your way. People are going to get in your way, stopping you from getting to the win or getting to the finish line. Winning is something that doesn't just involve an individual. I think sometimes individuals will technically be able to celebrate the win, but in all honesty, when you really start talking to somebody who's won a gold medal or won an NBA championship or won the World Series, there's a whole team of people around them that really help to get that win. So the first box, and we'll get through these boxes as fast as possible, but the first box that I kind of want to get through is consistency will define the victory. Consistency will define the victory. And sometimes we think in life that consistency is not important, but consistency is so important. So in order to be able to be consistent, you have to be willing to get into a routine. Getting in a routine requires work, it requires commitment, and it also requires the ability to ask for help. Being able to win and being able to get the victory is important for you to be able to ask for help. And then within that line, communication is also critical. We're talking right now, we're communicating, I'm giving information, but the reality is that communication is not just key to get good information. Communication is critical to building relationships, to building trust, all of those type of things that we'll kind of go over. And then complete assignments early and often. And so consistency. Consistency equals the victory, but it will also take work. Okay, so it takes 18 to 254 days to form a habit. And on average, it takes 21 days to get a habit done, 66 days for a habit to become automatic. And so for me, I have experienced this. And if you are any sports or anything like that, ladies, you probably know that in order to be able to get that consistent, to able to form that habit, you have to consistently do it. A habit for me is I go to the gym every day. If I'm in another city and they don't have a gym that I have access to, then I do some form of physical fitness every day. That's a consistency thing for me. And so last night, as I was preparing for this, I was like, well, let me go ahead and give you guys an example of what consistency looks like. So last week was a busy week for me. It was an ACT Saturday. I'm the ACT administrator at Texarkana College, in addition to all the other stuff that I do. And so last Saturday, my morning started at 3:15 a.m. So I got up at 3:15 a.m., kind of woke up. Simba, who is my dog, sometimes doesn't allow me to roll over in the bed. And so I think I finally got out of the bed around 3:30. And by 3:45, I was in the car headed to the gym. So got to the gym, left the gym, I think, got there around 4:06 exactly. Left around 6 o'clock, got home, walked him, took him out, was in the car, headed to the campus around 7:14. I got there around 7:18. Did the ACT administration. The ACT testing system went down at 12:30. So we had to figure that out. I think it came back on 1:30. Then my barber was texting me saying that he was ready to cut my hair by 1:40. So I had to leave some students there with the proctor, got a haircut. Then I went from the haircut back to the house to let Simba out again for a walk. Then I went back to campus, boxed up all of the testing materials, got them off to FedEx, was home again. I think Simba went out for a walk before I fed him. Then I had to go to an NAACP event. I say all that to say, even though my day was long, it had very much consistency tied to it. Consistency is walking the dog at least 3 times a day. Consistency is going to the gym. Consistency is making sure that all of my expectations and norms that I've set for myself get accomplished. And what I'm teaching a lot of the team that works with me is setting the expectations and norms up front. And when you set expectations and norms up front, it involves having conversations. It involves communicating. And ladies, as you prepare to go to college, you have to be able to set that expectation up front. And that involves sometimes allowing your friends who may be your friends now to understand that my expectation is to be a graduating senior with at least a 3.75 GPA or a 4.0 GPA. And in order to have that expectation set, sometimes you got to block people out. Sometimes the people who are in your circle now won't be in your circle, let's say 2 months from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now. A lot of times we don't set the expectation. We don't let people know what our value is. My expectation is that I'm going to graduate, and I'm not just going to graduate, I'm going to graduate with honors, and I'm going to graduate with scholarships. Whatever your expectation is for your norm or for yourself, you have to be very clear about letting other people understand that. Let go of things that are holding you back. And that's why that expectation and conversation like that, it allows you to let go of things that are potentially holding you back of getting to that consistency, of getting to that place. And so consistency involves practice, working out every day, whatever that is for you. There's a couple of kids that come to the gym every day, 5 days a week. They get there at 6:10, they're out by 6:50, and then they're preparing to go to school. When you start consistently working on things, it starts preparing you for what the business world is going to look like, or what your professional life is going to look like. And so the earlier you can start doing that in your lives, the easier it is for you after you graduate from high school, after you graduate from college, and even beyond. Another story, lots of stories. A lot of my stories evolve around airports and airplanes. Just because most of my family's in Los Angeles. And so the way things are now, I spend a lot of time going back and forward. And so a couple months ago, I was on a plane. I normally don't talk to people on the plane, but for whatever reason, me and the gentleman sitting next to me, we started having a conversation. And the conversation was really eye-opening and enlightening to me because he works for an energy drink company. And so the energy drink company, he was explaining to me how he was leaving a distribution meeting. And so when you get products, I got this Goalie product right here. And so the manufacturer has to make the product, but then after the product is made, then they have to still get it to a distributor. And so I say all that to say, you never really know who you're sitting next to, and you really never know the power of that communication and what those opportunities could open up for you. And so sometimes we have to be willing to make those uncomfortable conversations, because in the end, it allows us to advance our journey. And so Dwayne Johnson says, success isn't always about greatness. It's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success. Greatness will come. College is going to be hard work. If we were in an in-person environment, I would everybody say hard work. And hard work is something that evolves over time. And as things start evolving, the hard work can kind of get a little bit more harder because you're branching out to further places in your life. So remember, it's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success. And then that communication. So let's talk a little bit about communication and the importance of good eye contact. So as I was sitting next to this gentleman on the airplane, I did make good eye contact with him. Of course, I did have on a mask. I introduced myself. I did speak clearly. And one of the things that we sometimes forget is to first listen. Listen first, and then start speaking to be heard. Confidence will win. Confidence will win. We have to be confident in who we are. That's one of the first traits of being a good leader, is to being knowing yourself. And when you understand and you know yourself, it helps to build confidence. And I think I said this a few minutes ago, trust equals a communication. Whenever anybody starts talking to me about trust, my ears start opening up, because if you're talking about trust, it means that you're a communicator. Because in order to be able to build trust, you have to communicate. You have to be open. You have to be honest. You have to be transparent, which means being open. And so Oprah says, great communication begins with connection. And so you have to make that connection to be able to communicate with somebody. And once you start communicating with somebody, you start building a relationship. Once you start building that relationship, then you start understanding who they are, and then you start trusting them. And so, see, it's a process. You can't just say, hey, I trust somebody. You've only known them for 30 minutes. And so when you start going to college and things like that, and I'm not saying don't trust people, but put your guard up, be cautious, build yourself, not a wall, but build yourself a good support system until you're really able to start communicating with people, until you're really able to start knowing who they are, because, confidence will definitely win, but with the confidence, then comes the communication. And then with the communication comes trust. We talk about handshaking, and there is a proper way to shake hands. Okay, so you want to shake with your right hand, and you also want to, again, give that good eye contact. Eye contact is so important because it lets people know you're confident. People looking down all around, not so much. You have to be bold, and that confidence comes with good eye contact. Stand up for the handshake. I often tell people, particularly younger people who are my age, that it's important for when older people come around to stand up. It's a form of respect. And so standing up to shake their hand, if for some reason you're in an awkward place and you can't get up, then I normally say, excuse my seat. And sometimes that happens. Like if I was in a place where it was just not possible, then I would definitely let people know, excuse my seat. Wet hands. If you sweat a lot, like I do, sometimes you may have wet palms. And so sometimes it may be important to kind of make sure your hands are dry, particularly if you know you're going to be shaking a lot of hands. And then also in the environment where they're in right now, it's okay to have a small little thing of Purell or some type of hand sanitizer. I normally travel with hand sanitizer with me all the time, little bottle like that, just to make sure that after you do shake hands that you're able to, just sanitize them as well. But that is the importance of the handshake. The handshake for some people is paramount to whether or not the conversation will go forward with a good handshake. So again, all of that, handshaking, consistency, communicating, all of that. So consistency will define the victory. And then after we are consistent, sometimes we'll get victories. Small victories are wins. But I say this to say, one victory is not enough. One win is not enough. Graduating from college is great. Graduating from high school is wonderful. But you got to keep moving. There's so much in this world. There's so much in this community. There's so much in this country that we need people to take on and become active. So one win is not enough. We have to keep moving. We have to use that win as fuel to allow us to be able to do more in our lives, to be able to be impactful. There's a thing that people say now about paying it forward. And so many people have paid it forward for me. That's why things like these on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. are important to be able to do this, because I remember when I was in high school and college, others would do this same thing for us. They would impart information on us. And sometimes information that's given, all of it's not for you. And if it's not for you, that's cool. But I believe that in every moment, in every situation, there's something that we can get from conversations and from presentations and from learning experiences. We have to be able to always put ourselves in the classroom. Every day I'm in the classroom. Literally, everybody was coming on. I'm reading this article. I do a lot of work from the Hope Center for college, community, and justice. And so they deal with a lot of inequities that students have in college. And so they just put out a report. I'm always just fascinated by their reporting, the information they get. And so they're saying right now that 60% of students experience some type of basic need insecurities. And so then they go on to define what a basic need is. And a basic need is nutritious and sufficient food, safe, secure, and adequate housing to sleep, study, cook, and shower, healthcare to promote sustained mental and physical well-being. Mental health is so important, ladies, and everybody on this call. And so when you don't have access to healthcare for mental health, that's a basic need in security. Affordable transportation. How are you going to get back and forth to campus? Affordable technology, resources for personal hygiene, care, and family care related needs. Those are all basic needs for college students. And so when we start talking about empathy and engaging others and being, you have to understand the basic needs of what people are going through. And so that's why one win is not enough, because if you've won something, you now have to get involved in this struggle to help others who may have not won, or who may have won, but may have won at a cost. Our victory can help inspire others. It's your story. And every person on this call today is developing their story. I thought a couple of weeks ago, if I had to write my story, how many chapters would it be? How many chapters would your story be right now at 16, 17, 18 years old? I don't know, because everybody has different obstacles and different things that they've had to overcome. Everybody's story is different. The first generation story is not the same as the generation story, because I guess because my mom went to college, even though she wasn't supposed to go to college, it doesn't make me a first generation student, but it does make me a first generation student who had a parent with a physical challenge their whole entire life. I don't know where that falls in. So my story is very different than other people's stories. And being able to understand that is so critical. And that's why you have power in your testimony, power in your story. What does your end really look like? I don't know. You know, in January, I will unfortunately be 40. And I'm struggling with that. But at the end, when I'm looking at this slide right here, my end is not over. I'm still evolving. I'm still figuring out what my next steps in life are going to be. And so my challenge to you today is to keep evolving, keep growing, keep being a part of programs like this, so that you can have that opportunity to get more fuel. We were flying, Simba sometimes travels with me. And I say that kind of hesitantly because it's like traveling with the baby. And so we were traveling from Colorado back to Texarkana back in July. July is a horrible month to fly because there's a lot of thunderstorms and this like that. You will get redirected. Your flights will probably get canceled. And this is what happened. We were flying from Colorado. The flight, I think, was delayed by 30 minutes. I should have never got on the airplane, but I did. And so I was on the airplane. In middle of the air, there was a thunderstorm, which means the Dallas airport was only taking in so many planes. Long story short, our plane kept circling around the airport till finally it ran out of fuel. When a plane runs out of fuel, you have to land at another airport. They have to refuel you. Then they have to get you back up in the air, back to the DFW airport and back to your connecting flight. Long story short, the last flight into Texarkana left before I got there for it because I was refueling in Abilene. And so even though all of that happened, this captain was evolving. He had never been in this airport himself. He didn't even know that the jet bridge wouldn't come down to let him go off and re-inspect the airplane. And so they had to bring on a stairwell for him to walk down and re-inspect the plane. And so I say that to say, even as a captain at 60 years old, he was evolving right then and there. He got the plane refueled because he understood that his victory came getting his passengers to the final destination. I'm also a real big Great British fan. I watch The Crown, Downton Abbey, all those kind of things. And so Winston Churchill was Queen Elizabeth's first prime minister. And he prides himself in being her first prime minister because the present queen and her father, they were all friends together. So Winston Churchill was very friendly with King Edward VI, I believe. And so he was her first prime minister, and he prided himself on being able to teach her the ropes of leadership and being over a whole entire country. And so he says the price of greatness is responsibility. We have a responsibility to ourselves, to our families, and to our communities to be able to be actively engaged and involved in whatever that looks like. It may look like for you to be a doctor. You may need to be a teacher, a lawyer. Whatever it is for you, you owe it to yourself. It's a responsibility to you and your community to be able to be actively engaged. And so with that being the case, victory is a fuel, but setbacks will happen. Things will happen in life. Obstacles will come in. And so we have to be ready for that. We have to be willing and growing from our mistakes. We will make mistakes. Everything is not a clear roadmap. It can't be. And so it's important to start strong, and it's important to finish stronger. And so when you start strong, you prepare. But when you finish stronger, you already know, and you give yourself room for things to happen in life. And that's why, again, it's so important to build that support system of trust, of communication, and consistency for when those setbacks happen in life. And so I feel like Jay-Z says this: I will not lose, for even in defeat, there's a valuable lesson learned. So it evens up for him. We do learn lessons in defeat. There's no way you can't. Because when you start figuring out what the defeat was, you start tracing back your steps. And when you're able to start tracing back your steps, then you're able to start figuring out where those pieces may have gotten off track. And so for some of us, it involves studying. I need to study for the science test 3 days before the test. And I didn't study until 24 hours before. So it didn't kind of work out, but you kind of know where your obstacles or hindrances are. You could say that with some type of job. If you know that you have to leave your house 15 minutes before work at 9 a.m. and you don't get there until 9:15, that could technically be seen as a defeat, but you know the lesson learned in the future. Sometimes the lessons hit harder than others. Sometimes if you're consistently late to work, then they're gonna write you up or they may fire you. But in that end, hopefully you've learned some type of lesson. So Jay-Z says it best: I will not lose, for even in defeat, there's a valuable lesson learned. All right, so we covered consistency will define the victory. Victory is just fuel. But this is the part that people don't really want to have the conversation about. They don't want to set the expectation that the process will be tough. Tough. A lot of times people are like, "Oh, Barack Obama, I say this unapologetically. I was not a real Obama fan at first, but he went through the process, and the process was tough for him, but ultimately he won. And so he won with that consistency every single day. And one victory in Iowa then moved to another victory in the primary, which ultimately moved him ahead of Hillary Clinton back in 2008. You guys may really be young around all of that time. But anyhow, that whole transition of how that kind of went through was a process. And his process was very tough. He dealt with race. He dealt with age. He dealt with a lot of the different isms that we have. And all of that kind of built to this November day where him and his young family is walking out in Chicago, not just accepting a nomination for the presidency, but accepting the fact that the country voted for him. So the process was tough. And so when you start talking about the process, it equals hard work. And so in this, we want to talk about etiquette, because in etiquette is a part of your process. It's a part of being able to make those connections. First impressions matter. First impressions matter. When I would go and speak at a lot of high schools, when I was an admissions recruiter, I would always tell the students that you never know what somebody can give you in that first impression. And so if you're sitting up straight, if you're able to look and listen, they may have a scholarship for you. They may waive your application fee. They may provide you with the opportunities that other students may not get. Who knows? They may have a free college visit for you to go out of state to visit the college of your choice. You never know what that person can offer you, which is why first impressions are first so important. And again, that's so important about the people who start with you may not complete with you. They said that back on August 18th, 2000. That was my college orientation at Wilberforce University. And they do that, look to your right, you to the left, and you're like, okay, yeah, right. But the more and more I think about it, the person on the right or the left of me, I think one of them graduated, but they did not graduate in 4 years. I think it took them closer to 6, so keep that in mind. The people who start with you may not complete with you, which is why you have to be that confident person to be able to know that sometimes you got to ride or die by yourself. Sometimes the people who are with you, they may not be that same team member that ends with you. Amanda Gorman, who was the last poet at President Biden's inauguration this past January, says this: for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. People are watching. And I think sometimes people are like, well, people are watching. I think they're watching me to fail. No, sometimes people are not watching you to fail. They're watching to see how you move, how you win, how you become consistent, how you use victories for fuel, how you understand the process will be hard work. And so history has its eyes on us. Let history watch and let history know the good things that you have in store for yourself and for others. So this etiquette part that I normally do, I'm just going to walk us through, give us some diagrams of that. I had the privilege to actually use etiquette a couple of weeks ago at this wedding that I went to. And it's so cool to kind of have an idea of what's expected for you at formal events. And so that expectation was set when I got the invitation. We walk over here really fast. Get the invitation. And so the invitation set the tone. And so the invitation pretty much said, this is a black tie event. And so when you know it's a black tie event, you start preparing for such. What did she say? Yeah, she has black tie. Reception to follow, and so black tie. So etiquette, the customary code of polite behavior in society or among members of a particular profession or group. This particular black tie event I went to, they provided you with 3 meal choices. So you could either have beef, fish, or a vegetarian option. Understand that is not always the case. And that's why I always put, this is not your last meal. And even though I selected the fish, I may have not liked the fish selection. And so it's still very important to understand that whenever you go to formal events, it's not your last meal. And so actually my cousin and I, we got this from our grandparents years ago. They normally would be like, yeah, you need to eat something small before you go to like a formal event. One, because you never know what's going to go on with meal service. It could be backed up. The particular event may have a lot of other activities for everybody before you actually eat. So this event started at 5:30. We had a light snack around 2:30, 2:45, just because, again, it wasn't our last meal. And so be polite and respect the table. I always encourage people not to have political conversations at the table because it could really make an event that's supposed to be nice and meaningful. It could just turn it in the wrong direction. Come to the table with clean hands and a clean face. That, you know, you would think that's kind of given. And in this day and time, when folks normally travel with Purell, sometimes that's a conversation starter. And so, you know, people will ask, do you, you know, would you care for some hand sanitizer now? And so that kind of got passed around the table. Also, put your napkin on your lap. I noticed that several people at my table started eating the bread without doing that. So from the time you start the first um, consumption of food into your mouth, that napkin should be on your lap. And then you want to start eating when everyone else does, or given the okay to start. And so we had a situation where somebody at our table got the wrong meal. And so in order for us to be polite, we waited until their meal came. And in some cases, if your meal's going to be super long and you're the one that everybody's waiting on, then you kind of get to take the lead and be like, oh no, please don't wait. Go ahead, proceed. And then that's everybody's okay, that you're okay with them starting. And then stay seated and sit up straight. That's just customary, particularly if there's a program going on. I always like to plan my exits based off the program if I don't have to leave, or if I have to leave early. And I always like to tell my host that I may have to depart early if possible, just so they know. And so here's a basic plate setting type of a deal. And so you see the different forks and utensils that you have. And yeah, this was very much the case to that event I went to. It did have more silverware just because it had more courses. So this is set right now. This is set for a 2-course. So you get your salad and then your main entree and then dessert and then bread. And so you always start from the outside, working your way in. And it kind of gives you the idea in this diagram here of how to use what to move forward. So that's the place setting. The salad. It's okay it's okay to not eat the salad. Leave it placed on the table and wait for the server to remove it. And so with COVID going on, and I can't remember here because I don't think I've been to anything in Texas yet post-COVID. But so this event was in Los Angeles. And so it used to be where your salad a lot of times was already on the table. In this particular event, they even brought the salad out. But it's okay not to eat the salad. You just leave it. You stay seated. You're sitting up straight. You're still having the conversations with people. Elbows are off the table and other parts as well of the body are off the table while eating. Chew with your mouth closed and do not talk until you have swallowed the food. And so there's an appropriate way to just position to people, excuse me, you know, I'm still chewing. And then after that, you can answer what question they have. Say, please pass the, instead of reaching. And so I like to give the example of whatever's kind of in front of you, that's yours to kind of be in control of. And so if the salt and pepper is in front of you, someone may very well ask you to pass the salt and pepper. In the case of the bread, it was in front of my brother-in-law. And so I was like, hey, Daniel, get the bread started. Please pass the bread. And so he started passing the bread around the table. And so kind of understand that you may have butter. And so once the bread is starting to go, you may need to start passing the butter around to others. And so that normally, the passing normally starts when the salads normally come out. And then the actual meal. Do not make bad comments about the meal, you know, because you never know who's listening. You never know who's around. And again, that first impression could lead to something else. One bad meal could cost you a $160,000 job. You just don't know. And so chat with everyone at the table, you know, introduce yourself. Again, that first and last name. No rude noises like burping or slurping. Announce your departure to the table if you must leave early. And then enjoy the dessert and be prepared for the next part of the event and program. And so in this case, the dessert came out a little bit later because there was a program part before the dessert part. And so again, I say all to say, when you're going to formal events, you really kind of know the etiquette, know how to use this stuff on the table. But then again, you have to go with whatever the planners have kind of planned for. But this way, knowing etiquette 101, you can kind of move with the punches. All right. And so we now go into first impressions a little bit more. And we talked about this a little bit, but J.K. Rowling, I'm also a Harry Potter fan. And so she says a good first impression can work wonders. Yeah, it can. And so leaders are watched. Amanda says history has its eyes on you. Leaders are watched. When you're bona fide as a leader, people are watching you, if nothing else, because they're trying to figure out what you're wearing, they're looking at you for a very variety of reasons. And everybody on this call today, each debutante here, in my opinion, is a leader. Any leaders up at 10 o'clock, engaged listening to this, you got some type of leadership quality in you. Hygiene is important. Hygiene is important, particularly for formal events, but for all events, you gotta, watch your hygiene. And then dress the part. And so again, we talked about this invitation for this particular event was black tie. If they tell you black tie, come black tie. Don't come for what you would wear for an after party. You respect the first impression, but respect the guest and respect the fact that you were thought of enough to be invited to the event. And again, you never know who you will meet. So appearance helps, wash our face, brush our teeth, shower and bathe, body spray, perfume, and cologne. All of that is important. You want to be ironed, your clothes out, very neat. Sometimes, there's things that happen, obstacles come in the way, and that's going to happen. Life is going to happen. Life's going to get in the way. Your body spray may be in a bag that the airline lost. If you can go to CVS and get some cheap body spray that may not be your own body, you got to roll with the punches. And we kind of talked about this last time a little bit in depth. And so hair can be a form of expression. Yes, it can. But we particularly, as a lot of minority people, our hair is definitely a form of our expression, but we also have to be able to understand the dynamic and the environment that we're in. And so I think I used that example, last time, in terms of allowing your hair to be a form of your expression, but also understanding the people and the audiences that you're playing for. And so just keep that in the back of your mind. Don't allow people to take away your expression, but you kind of set that tone. And so, give you an example. So when my cousin, not my cousin who runs track, but my cousin who kind of runs the business side of things, when he has very long hair, afro hair. And so when he's going to a formal event or something, he makes sure that his hair is very well braided and very well lined up. And so that, when he's going in those events, because it's already like, well, there's this 38-year-old African-American male who, is a million. Anyway, there's already that dynamic. So for him, it's a little bit different, but he's still very cautious of how it's going to look and how that expression is going to be looked, particularly when he's looking for investors and things like that for different things. So you set your story, you set how that looks. And it's an individual choice, but it's an individual choice that we still want to make sure we're very groomed and very neat with our form of expression. All right, so I think we're done with that. So the process will be tough, and we are on our last box. So we talked about consistency will define the victory. Victory is just fuel. The process will be tough. But then lastly, our work should speak for us, which talks a little bit about branding. What is our individual brand? What is our symbol? What is our logo? What is our name, word, and our sentence that companies use to distinguish their product? Each of us can have a brand. Is your brand honesty and integrity? Is your brand, hey, I show up on time to work every day. I'm at school. I finish all my assignments. That was part of my brand. You know, when I was in high school, I made sure all of my assignments were in on time. I made sure that I was on time. And again, that's just a part of you defining who you are and making people understand that. And so think about what your brand is. How will you stand out? How will you set yourself apart from others in a meaningful sense and in a meaningful environment? And so for me, work ethic is definitely a part of anybody's brand. And so when I think about work ethic and when I think about a brand, I think about people who are honest, who have integrity. And I keep hitting on integrity lately these days because just integrity is so important. And so this is Oxford Language Dictionary defines integrity as the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. Dedication. How dedicated are you to the mission? How dedicated are you with your passion and with your purpose? Determination, accountability, listening. Leaders listen. And I think sometimes a lot of people think, well, leaders got to be able to talk. No, sometimes you can just listen. Sometimes you can take the form of listener before you ever say anything in the atmosphere. And then being accountable for what you have to do, both professionally and unprofessionally, just being accountable for that, being determined, being dedicated. Again, these are just things to think about when you think about what your brand is going to look like. I would definitely consider really thinking about how that integrity piece, that accountability piece goes into what your brand is, because at the end of the day, people are looking for people who are honest to work for them. Back in 2008, when I was working at one institution, I was never in the office because my job was to recruit students. And so I was Anchorage, Alaska, California, Seattle. I was just all over the country. But when you hire recruiters, when you hire people to work for your company to get you more, in this case, students, there's a level of trust that company has, because they're trusting you in many cases with the purchase card. They're trusting you to go out and get good contacts. They're trusting that the message that you're giving out is communicated as a part of their brand, which means you're taking their brand and bringing it in to your brand, which is why when I make decisions about even for who I speak for, I'm like, okay, what is this organization about? What do they stand for? What is their brand? Does it align with my brand? You'll notice that some athletes don't do certain endorsements because it doesn't align to where their brand is. So just really start looking through those kind of things and seeing, oh, okay, so he never really does any advertisement for that, or she always advertises for this, or it's always about this, because it aligns in with their brand. And that's what makes collaborating and communicating, again, I keep saying communicating, and now I've added collaborating. That's what makes it so beautiful, because when you're able to collaborate with like-minded people, you're able to evolve even more, and you're able to touch more lives, and you're able to get more things accomplished, which brings us to what leadership looks like. So ask me about leadership. Leaders understand the importance of integrity. I won't go any more into that. Leaders also understand who they are, a good knowledge of knowing who you are. Leaders look different. And I said this at another thing I was at. They smell differently, they walk differently, but they look different because at the end of the day, they got what I like to call grit. So they have passion and purpose. They're bold about what they do. And all of that kind of makes them look different because, they walk upright, confident. They admit to mistakes. We did not give you an example. Oh, perfect example. So I was supposed to be at this conference in November, which I'm now no longer going to because I waited too long to get the conference registration in. So I admitted to the executive board, hey, can't go. The conference is sold out. I'm sorry about that. I didn't make an excuse that, oh no, they're not letting anybody else in. They denied my registration. No, it was honesty. I made a mistake. I didn't get it in time because I had too much other stuff going on. So you admit to your mistakes. And you're open to new things. And that's always about that evolving piece that we talked about earlier. You're willing to listen and learn. You're able to adjust. Change is a parent, it's going to happen. It's good in many cases. So you're able to adjust and you're excited to train others. Leadership is not just about you knowing all the information, but it's more so about how you're able to impact and move other people to the situation that you are, in hopes that they even take it further than where you are. Does that make sense? If you're always wanting people to just stay relevant to where you've advanced to, then all the work that you did to advance where you are will never go anyplace, because everybody's just staying in that one place. You get it later, just kind of put it together like a puzzle piece. You want them to move even further. And so it's all about moving forward, which is why when I was talking to President Young about the first generation story, a first generation student is already excited to train others, because once they get it, then they want their little brother, they want their little sister to go through the process of going through college. And for college, for the little brother and sister, it may just be getting a 1-year certificate or degree. It may be going to get a doctorate degree. My sister has a doctorate degree. Figure that. And so it was exciting for her to see me go to college, and she just took it to the next level where she got herself into a program at Ohio State where they did her master's and her doctorates together in 6 years. So yeah, we've moved the gamut. And so now our family, for a family of mom, dad, sister, and brother, now the sister has a doctorate from a mother who wasn't supposed to get a bachelor's to a brother who just has a master's. You start working the pieces together. And so it becomes exciting for you to see others take it to the next level. And so don't follow the crowd, let the crowd follow you. Margaret Thatcher was also a prime minister in Great Britain. She had her ups and downs. She was the first female prime minister. And this is apparent for her. It's very accurate. She never she never followed the crowd. She let everybody follow her. And so that is also very, very important. So watching us work, determined to win, consistency will define the victory. Victory is just fuel. The process will be tough, but again, our work should speak for us. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which I think is my final quote, who passed back in 2020, just a wonderful Supreme Court justice. And she, was appointed by President Bill Clinton. She talks about real change, enduring change happens one step at a time. I said this on Saturday night about being able to redefine and renew my mission of empowering, equipping, and leveling the playing field for all students. And when I do that, I also talked about how it's not going to be easy and how change is not going to happen overnight. And it takes steps, sometimes baby steps. Sometimes it's just changing the color of a logo that took a lot of time to get that done. But when you start thinking about change and when you start understanding what Justice Ginsburg is saying about how it could be slow, but it's happening. Changing family dynamics don't happen overnight. But if you're in this position right now, if you're in this debutante training for the fall and the spring, it's going to empower your cousins or your younger sister. They're going to want to do it. And so it's so important to not only make your experiences count, but to be that role model for others so that their experiences can count as well. So I believe that that is it for us. We're determined to win. We will win. We will get there, not just as individuals, not just as small groups like this, but we will get there. I believe it as a community, as a country, and even as a world, because we're developing people, even in these small environments in Texarkana, in places like South Central Los Angeles. We're developing the next generations of leaders to be consistent, to use their victory as fuel, to know the process will be tough, but then understanding that their work ethic, their brand speaks for itself. So I think I went about a little too long, probably about 6 minutes over, and I apologize for that, but hope this information is good. I hope you guys have learned some valuable information to not just get you through your process of high school, but even to start engaging you as you start moving into the next realm of your life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. I'm going to ask everyone, if you would, to unmute yourself and join me in giving Mr. Williams a round of applause. If you would unmute yourself and give him a round of applause.